My name is Dallin Corver. I'm here to document and discuss every ghost that has been recaptured since they escaped the mansion. A mansion that was converted in order to hold said ghosts. My number one goal is to gain an understanding with each of the subjects and hope that we can find an answer on how to cure them, or maybe just stop them from spreading. They have been out of our immediate control for 3 weeks now, and during that time, we've been able to recapture 6 of them. This time around, the ghosts are more rampant. They have been able to evade capture and have unfortunately created more victims in that time, some of which have become ghosts and others that have not. It seems that they have stayed in the Lake Valley where it all started. The public is fully aware of them now, and it has caused a panic. Everyone's been told to lock down the doors at any facility, house, or building they enter, as well as be in close vicinity of a motor vehicle at all times while outdoors. This has become a real shit show, and everyone's safety is at risk. I have no desire for what might come in the formidable future. Subject 1. Olivia Reese, 22 years old, 5 feet 5 inches, dirty blonde hair, white. In life, Olivia was a part-time cashier at a fast food chain, the Polar Circle, and a part-time student at Lake Community College. Any extra free time was spent with friends and families, often going to the city to shop at the mall, eat at restaurants, or take part in short hikes in the mountains nearby. On Sundays, she attended the Church of Jesus Christ, supposedly never having missed any of the religious congregations in her entire life. It was on one of these communal Sundays, it seemed Olivia was nowhere to be found. When she did finally arrive, toddlers stopped crying, children stopped fidgeting, and heads turned. One of the members had this to say. It was suddenly dead silent. Everything just fell off. It was a quiet unheard of among so many people. I decided to open my eyes and looked in the direction everyone else was, which was at one of the main doors. There was Olivia. I was shocked to see the state she was in. She looked nearly translucent, shimmering under the bright lights of the chapel. Her neck was laying flopped on her shoulders like it was completely broken. She was leisurely moving towards the front at a sluggish pace, and the way she moved was very uncoordinated, languid even. Her limbs and hair looked light and feathery, like gravity wasn't affecting her the same way as it was us. Her face was horrible, looking at everyone in complete terror, as if every one of us was causing her great pain, and she seemed lost like a scared toddler in a huge store. I knew she was dead the second I saw her. No life was emitting from Olivia. The people of the church, myself included, wanted to believe that she was a blessing from the Holy Ghost. But I'm telling you, there was no comfort in her presence. If she was sent by anyone, it was Satan. Olivia's body was found in her bedroom, which was in complete shambles. Torn drapes, shelves knocked over, and clumps of her ripped-out hair littered the floor. It was obvious Olivia fought for her life until the very end. She was struck hard with a blunt object, a wooden bat, to the side of the neck, causing the oxygen to stop flowing to her brain, which ultimately ended her life. The murder weapon was found in her room, cracked nearly in 2 pieces by an immense physical force. Olivia's top eyelids were crudely cut off by a kitchen knife, which was also found at the scene, and there was an oozing substance discharging from her eyes and trailing down her cheeks. Olivia was known to have bright hazel eyes, but her eyes were found to be a much darker, almost black color. Post-mortem, the corneas will develop an opaque, bluish haze over the eye, causing the color of the eye to look much duller. Olivia still had this opaque haze, but the deep, dark color of her iris still showed through. The ghost of Olivia is one that displays perpetual apprehension of others, although seems to be unceasingly pursuing an unknown ambition or purpose we have yet to identify. She whines and groans a sad squeal, her mouth constantly agape. When others have tried to approach her, she begins to breathe heavily and starts tripping over herself. She focuses her vision on the person approaching, her eyes shaking in hysteria. Each low groan begins to meld into a shrill scream, and when a person is close enough, Olivia will curl up into a fetal position on the ground and scream endlessly until the approaching individual leaves. Trying to touch Olivia will cause her to thrash, scratching and clawing, as if she's being attacked. Olivia's lack of coordination and her low threat level combined proved recapturing her to be fairly straightforward. She was by far the easiest to find, and she had gone back to the church she was first spotted at almost a year prior. She seemed to be searching for something. Olivia was then placed back in that maze of a mansion. Subject 2. Victor Mora, 63 years old, 145 pounds, 6 feet, brown hair, brown eyes, Cuban American. According to Victor's family, throughout his 20s, he worked hard to become the notorious lawyer he is now known for. Spending several years as an undergraduate, Victor stayed up long nights cooped away in his room, studying day in and day out so he could eventually support his family. Unfortunately, this dedication to work also brought a barrier between him and his family. He was tired every day and too exhausted to be bothered, but eventually it all paid off. When I asked Victor's family about the success of his career, it brought frowns to their faces. I thought for a moment it must have not been very successful. I was wrong about this. He was very successful, but he took on some cases his family wasn't proud of. In 1993, Victor represented a client by the name Frederick Hauser suspected of multiple murders. There wasn't much evidence against him. The big thing they had on him were the tools left at the crime scene of the last murder committed, which were also used as the murder weapons. Those tools were Frederick's. His name was on the tool case and his fingerprints were all over the tools. Although there were no bloody fingerprints on or off the victim, despite there being blood everywhere. When Frederick showed up for work the next day, he explained to his employer that he forgot his tool bag at home. Shortly after, the police showed up with a few questions geared towards Frederick, and soon after they arrested him under probable cause. In the courtroom, Victor convinced the judge and the jury that Frederick's tools were simply stolen from him and someone else had used them for the murder. He had even gone to work that day as a hard-working American, placing Frederick in good light with good values. His verdict was not guilty. Victor had no kids, no wife, and he never bothered to visit his family. He only supported them for a good few years and only came around for the holidays. Because of this, it took 2 weeks for Victor's body to be discovered. It wasn't until one of his siblings attempted multiple calls in the course of almost a week with no answer that they went to Victor's house. When he didn't answer their knocking, the cops were called in for a welfare check. Luckily, his family didn't have to see the state Victor's body was in. Surprisingly, it wasn't a complete mess. A mess in the sense that there wasn't blood everywhere, but contained in one area. Victor's body was tied to a chair and the poor guy suffered through to the end. His eyelids, just like Olivia's, were cut off. The same oozing substance also found in his eyes was dripping on the floor. 3 of his fingers on his right hand were split down the middle. It looked to be done by some kind of saw, judging by the serrations of the cuts. His wrist was badly bruised, probably due to whoever's gripping him so tight. His face was roughly sawed in a couple of places, a big gash on the cheek, and a couple of cuts on his forehead. The last saw cut was to his throat, which inevitably ended his life. The ghost of Victor is one that displays minor aggression to those that approach him. It looks to be more in self-defense rather than a desire to hurt the individual. He will swing his arms wildly, snapping them around and raising his gurgled voice to a yell. Other than that, he just looks disappointed 24/7, like he's unable to comprehend something he's done. Victor has actually been heard speaking coherent sentences on occasion. Here are a few things he has uttered. Stay away. Could have stayed away. You know what you've done. Look at you, crawling out of your hole. I had a chance to run. Had a chance. I had to run. Had to have a chance to run. Run had a chance. The first time Victor's ghost was found, he was still in his own house, in the basement corner, standing and muttering quietly to himself. When recaptured, Victor was found wandering the city streets, his head hanging low and shaking side to side, his feet dragging roughly against the sidewalk, mumbling incoherently. Subject 3. Oliver Smith, 47 years old, 6 feet 2 inches, light brown hair, 285 pounds, father of 5, white. Oliver, a man once dedicated to attending church and teaching the word of God to his children, burned himself to the ground, working day in and day out at his accounting job for Rising Dawn Fitness. He put in hard work to support his wife and kids, at times pulling in overtime so his family didn't go hungry by the time his next paycheck hit. He arrived home each day, too tired to do much of anything, always sagging down in his chair, trying to turn his brain off in front of the television. The weekend seemed to be a time of solace where Oliver could get some minor chores done, maybe make a meal for the family before he'd get back to his chair, once again to tune out. Oliver's wife, Emma, explained how he had zero patience for disturbance, sending his wife and kids berating words until they left him in peace. Emma reiterated a few of these words he spoke throughout the years. What is it that you want? What do you want? Speak up. Guess I'll get off my ass and do it, since you can't. I can't get any fucking peace around here, can I? Should've never had any kids, it's just a constant misery. Emma never had a desire to leave throughout the years. She knew the man she fell in love with still had that same love inside of him. Why would he put himself in a position of monotony and hard work if he didn't love them? One night, Emma broke down crying in her bedroom, telling him, "You don't have to be miserable. You don't have to work at a job that you hate. You don't have to work yourself to death over and over again until you go insane and hate everyone you love. I want you to have desires, passions, or wants other than your stupid television." After listening to what she had to say, Oliver then surprised Emma when he started crying and he wailed, "I want to be happy. I want you guys to be happy, and I want to help make you happy. I've pushed my desires aside until I forget what they are so I don't have to think of them, but I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to make changes for me and for all of you guys. I want to feel better and do better for myself and my family." Oliver began to make changes for himself the very next day. He had always had a free membership to Rising Dawn Fitness, the very same facility he had worked at for many years, although he had never used his membership. He had never had a desire till now. He thought he might as well give it a chance. As hopeful as all that sounds, while on his way to the gym, Oliver swung suddenly and his car swerved, spinning out of control and causing a 7-car pileup on the freeway. He was the only one who lost his life in this accident. His car was smashed like tinfoil into a crude cube shape. His body had many injuries including broken limbs, a broken spine, and a cervical fracture, resulting in his death. Strangely enough, his head injuries were minimal. A witness stated that when she looked to her left and saw Oliver's car swinging back and forth, and just before he hit and totaled her vehicle, she saw another figure in the car with him. The body of that figure was never found. Unlike the other ghosts, Oliver's eyelids were still attached, and whoever did this to them, why did they choose a difficult time to change him, like driving? The only similarity being the oozing substance found in his eyes. A splatter of it ended up on the wheel and dashboard. Oliver never actually escaped the mansion. It was pretty much assumed that every ghost took their chance and booked it. He was found on the top floor, near a window and sitting in a rocking chair. He just sits there day in and day out, staring at the window in a constant state of haze. You can actually get pretty close to Oliver's ghost, but as soon as you get close enough to breathe on him, his grip tightens on the arms of the chair, his upper torso launches forward, head elongates, and he yells, "Leave!" Other times he'll just provide a threatening "Ah!" at you. Subject 4. Name unknown. Age estimated to be 28 to 34 years old. Black hair. Multiracial. Based on the area where Subject 4's body was found, the few items she had on her, and the lack of a missing persons report, it is believed that she was experiencing homelessness. At 1 a.m., in a homeless camp found near the bank of the Jordan River, loud wailing was heard coming from a woman nearby. Here is what one man stated. "I've never heard such horrible, horrific screams in my entire life. I went out of my tent to see if I could see anything, but it was so dark and I was scared to death to keep looking around. The screams were close to me, but I went into my tent and guarded myself until the screams stopped. I didn't have a cell phone to call anyone, and my tent wasn't as close to the others. Later, I did see siren lights coming up, so that's when I finally went out and left my tent." Subject 4's body was found very recently after death, and sadly, the wounds on her body were extreme. Her legs and arms were covered in bleeding wounds. It looked like someone was trying to unsuccessfully skin her with some kind of thin, square-shaped knife. Her face took the worst of it. A lengthwise gash ripping from the side of her cheek open to the corner of her mouth, with multiple other strips of flesh removed from her face. Her eyelids were noticeably removed, the oozing substance dripping and mixing with her blood. A final cut struck deep into her lower abdomen, bleeding her out and eventually ending her torment. Multiple people living in the camp were questioned if they knew Subject 4 or where she came from, but not one person was able to provide an answer. We don't know whether she was heading to a homeless camp to meet someone, or if she happened to be strolling on the trail that is located near the river. Subject 4 lives, if you'd call it living, in a constant state of unhinged fear. She's always fleeing from anyone and anything. My only guess is that she's trying to get away from the one who caused her great affliction. Approaching her always proves difficult since she's in a constant state of panic. Her screams are a throaty gurgling of agony, with no coherent sentences. If you do manage to get close to her, she will defend herself in every way possible, sometimes even bludgeoning the approacher with frantic blows. Subject 4's echoed screams were heard by bikers in the north segment of the Valley Trail. Seizing her took careful planning, time, and patience. We stationed officers at one end of the paved trail and let out more officers behind her. With the trail being too narrow to fit a vehicle, the officers had to essentially herd her through the trail and get her to reach a road. Once on the paved roadway, we were able to transport her. During this whole process, repeatedly, she would try and flee into the river in an attempt to bypass the officers. When we finally caught her, she was placed back at that mansion and back into the impossible maze where she can now wander endlessly, never to escape. Subject 6. Nothing is known about Subject 6's demographic information or background. He is an extremely challenging ghost to keep contained and has attained the nickname Menace. You'll soon understand why. Menace keeps a low profile while lurking the streets, always moving at night, always hiding in the shadows, never attention seeking. He has been seen on camera hopping in trash bins at dawn and just waiting there until dusk. He scurried out of small businesses as they closed and squeezed his way out of sewer grates, twitching on the way out. Menace doesn't want to be caught, so he can keep doing what he does best, causing immense suffering to anything and anyone around him. The only time we have been able to find and make contact with Menace is when he is actively torturing someone. Screams will be heard coming from a home. Neighbors call the police arrive seeing that it's a ghost and they can't do anything, so they call us. We then tell the police, only track him, do not try to stop him. Of course, they don't listen, and Menace has escaped many scenes, ripping through several policemen in the process. When we get to the scenes, most times it looks like Menace has used one of his toys to drill through the policemen's throats, occasionally the eyes, or sometimes just straight through their skulls. On one historic day, 911 received a frantic phone call from a man, and he stated, "Yes, hello, there's a ghost trying to kill me. Please, somebody hurry. I don't know if I can stay locked up for long. I'm bleeding real bad. I think it's Menace." At this point, everyone, including the police, knew who Menace was. The dispatcher sent police over to isolate him until we could arrive. They set up the barricades around the entire home and blocked every first floor door and window. According to the caller, he stirred to the sound of some kind of rotary drill, then bolted up when he felt something sharp drilling into his leg. When the man snapped up, he was abruptly stopped by some rope that seemed to be tied to his throat and neck, securing him to his bed frame. How Menace had managed that without waking the man up is beyond me, but this time, Menace slipped up. The man tilted and pushed his head into the bed and then pulled on the rope hard, scraping it off his face. He rolled off the bed and ran into the master bedroom, locking the door behind him. When Menace began breaking through, the man ran through the connecting hallway and into his spare bedroom, blocking the door with a heavy shelf before calling the police. When we arrived at the house and saw all the barricades, we thought the police had wasted their time and Menace had gotten away. However, they must have done an outstanding job because as we got closer, we could hear the inhuman screeches coming from inside. Menace was in a frenzied rage. We have a process for capturing ghosts, strategized by our own SWAT team of Ghostbusters, if you will. Each officer is equipped with a body cam for training and to cover our asses if anything goes south. They lug a tall, transparent, hulking shield, acting as a moving wall, and each officer will form a circle or semicircle around a subject. They will then begin repeatedly shoving the subject in the direction they need to go. Guns don't kill them, but can knock them into a different direction if it comes down to it. Knowing Menace's history, we purposely overprepared for the recapture, but even then, it was barely enough. We had 20 officers. 5 of them would create a circle around Menace, and others would be right behind or stationed around the house for backup. Not long after the first set of officers lined up at the barricaded front door, Menace decided to shut up. When everyone was ready, the officers were given the okay and we let them in the house. They moved in fast before the door was re-barricaded. Here is what happened inside. The frontline officers moved towards the master bedroom, while others stationed themselves at various entryways of the house to ensure Menace wouldn't get past them. When entering the master bedroom, the officers had to move in a single file line to fit through the doorway. This provided an advantage to Menace. He lunged into the first officer with an insane amount of force, knocking him back and crushing his skull against the shield of the officer behind him. Menace hopped up and over the next shield in his way, latching onto the next officer and pulling his head back to drill the screeching, watery weapon into the officer's throat. Menace was maliciously laughing during this ordeal when he was cut off by a Beretta 1301 shotgun. He flew and slammed into the hallway wall, screaming in rage. An officer ran up and pinned Menace to the wall, while another got in front to guard and another in the back to shove him up the hallway. They forcefully thrust his body up the hallway while Menace was screaming and flailing, trying to get away. When they met the edge of the wall, the officers prepared a blockade and pinned him between all of their shields. They then inched towards the door, and step by cautious step, they made their way out the door and to the containment truck while Menace's screams echoed through the suburban neighborhood. Subject 6 is a fanatic sadist, attracted to providing immense suffering to any living thing. There is no talking or reasoning with Menace. He doesn't seem interested in anything that you can say or do to him. He just stretches a wide and unnatural smile and provides an ear-splitting laughter in your direction. How he came to be is completely unknown. He doesn't act like any other ghost I've ever seen. The only similarities being that he is a ghost, and if you look into his lunatic eyes, you can see that his eyelids were also cut off, like most of the others. How does one turn into a ghost? Well, unfortunately, Subject 6 has been able to provide a possible answer for us. Based on the people Menace has victimized, we've seen that their eyelids have been sliced off in almost every case. Is this an attempt to keep their eyes open long enough so a ghost can look into them and pass on a curse? It's hard to say, especially with the inconsistency of Subject 3. No human has ever been caught killing a person that has become a ghost, but in most cases, a ghost hasn't been caught killing them either. This is only assumed because we've seen Menace at scenes where someone turns into a ghost. The mansion has been under new construction to contain the recaptured ghosts. Before the big escape, there were 13 of them, but that number has got to be a lot higher now, so we have to do an exceeding job at keeping them contained. I'm going to start having sessions with the subjects, these ghosts, and see if I can get any information from them. If I can, we might be one step closer to solving the mystery of these ghosts. I seem to be the only one that they seem interested in responding to, when questioned or spoken towards. Again, my name is Dallin Corver, and this concludes the end of this documentation.